The theme for today is communion. Our guest speaker is Reena Torres Mengotto, and she has been a parishioner at St. Patrick for over 30 years. She is also a licensed marriage and family therapist. She will be talking to us about the church and how we must all work together as one community.
Hi, everybody. My name is Reena, and as I was introduced, I realized that one of the things I failed to identify in my kind of biography or profile is that I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic Christian and proud parishioner of St. Patrick Parish here in Rodeo Hercules. So I just wanted to put that out there. I was invited to speak with you and just recently, and as I think back on that conversation and invitation, there was a stirring in my heart to say yes, and without hesitation. And so I think that just is an example of what it means to be a Christian, is to always be ready to answer the call yes when God or our fellow brothers and sisters are in need. There's this yearning and longing to shine that light. And so that's why I'm here in front of you today, and just feel very blessed and honored. So again, thank you. When I was preparing to speak on this topic of communion and church, I was drawn to the verse of the day, which is from Matthew 5:14, which is, "You are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill can't be hidden." And so as Christians, we are encouraged and often challenged and needing to reflect on, how am I serving as a light of Christ? As a Christian, where am I, shining this light, and how am I shining this light? Am I being the light to others? And so when we think about that light that shines, it's really about allowing God and inviting Him to shine through us. And how do we do that? I think we do that through these types of opportunities that we are called to. And there are three things that kind of align themselves with being called to shine that light. And it's a reflection that I want to take some time to talk to you guys about. So what are those ways that we can allow that shining light to work through us? So there's three things and thoughts. One is being an effective witness, serving others, and then being in fellowship with other Christians, brothers and sisters. And so when we're able to put our faith into these actions, this allows us to really connect with others, to again shine that light, so that others can have that same experience that we have in experiencing God's love, His grace, His mercy. And so the first thought is, being an effective witness. What does that mean? What does that look like? It looks differently for each of us, right? Because we have our own personal journeys. I'm sharing mine with you. But just some thoughts I wanted to share around that is, just even sitting here today with you guys in our communities and in the world, many are already answering the call to share and to give testimony and witness to the acts of injustice and dignity violations that have been happening. And so their hearts are being stirred to being called to act and to respond, right? So in the same vein, as followers of Christ, we too must answer that call. In knowing Him and being in relationship with Him, our hearts too stir and long to belong, long to be loved, and to share Him with those around us, right? Again, going back to how can I be an effective witness, right? We can't be an effective witness of His light and of our faith if there are spiritual barriers that create distance and disconnection to that light source. So in my own personal journey, I have many barriers that have led me astray or caused me to reprioritizing my faith, and often replacing it and putting fear, anxiety, worry, which then sometimes leads to anger, resentment, disappointment, hurt, and pain. And it just moves me further and further away from my light source, which is God and His Son and the promises that they provide. And it also disconnects me from my support systems, my family, my friends. So while it can be very painful for us to find ourselves in that dark place, I've come to learn that in order to return to the light, because we too, and that's the power of prayer and faith, we must and have to move through the thickness of the discomfort. It's moving through this darkness that the spiritual splinters are removed so that we can return to a new and affirmed in our faith and trust in God. Being an effective witness does not mean that, there's this expectation to be pure and to be perfect and to also have that same expectation on others. That's not effective at all, right? That creates those barriers that I mentioned earlier. But being an effective witness means answering the call, praying, walking the talk. Yes, we might fail, stumble, and it's when we call upon our faith in our Lord that helps us rise up from adversity and continue on our journey. So being an effective witness is one of the first steps, right? And then there's this principle of serving others. As Christians, we are called to serve others at our baptism, right? And yes, for many of us here, we were too young. We didn't even talk or walk. And most likely that decision was made by our parents. And as we had navigated through our Christian journey, especially as Catholic Christians, we have opportunities to reaffirm this call through our daily prayers, attending weekly services, and as a young adult, affirming our faith through the Holy Sacrament of Confirmation. However, it's not simply just answering the call, but it's what we do once we have been called to keep that and keep us aligned and abiding in our faith, hope, and trust in God. It's how do we keep that light shining during our journey, and that's through service of others. And in my work, I have come to learn as well that service is not just serving with our strengths. We serve with ourselves. It's who shows up, right, when we're called to serve. And that might be some of the limitations we might have. Our wounds, right? Our wounds serve us. Even our darkness can serve us. And so it's when we can bring our wholeness when we serve that we then can share in this equality with others, right? That we're coming and meeting others where they're at, right? With no expectations, unconditionally. So throughout my life journey, I have found many times being called to serve within my family. I'm called to serve as a wife and as a step parent to two teenagers, and as a mental health professional. I serve those who are struggling with trauma, with stressors, with events that may have caused them to become vulnerable and fearful. And even within my community, and for the past 30 plus years, I've called to serve in my parish family community of St. Patrick, serving as a leader, Eucharistic and minister and lector. And I think that's the life of a Christian, is we're always being ready to be of service. And that's how we continue to keep that light that I spoke of earlier shining bright. The third principle of keeping that light shining is in fellowship with others, right? That light, is meant to be shared. It's meant to shine bright from the mountaintop. And when we can share that light with others, it's stronger, it's brighter, and it's enduring, right? I believe as human beings, we are meant to be connected. And when we're not connected is when we then rely on our own understanding. We rely on the light starts to dim and darkness starts to fill and replace that light. So as human beings, it is so important to be connected. I know that that's something I value, and there are times when it is healthy to disconnect, right? Disconnect from social media, disconnect from the chaos and the noise that might be getting in the way for you in your daily walk. So that's okay, right? And I know sometimes I need to do that so that I can hear and be clear in my walk and where I want to shine my light. So it's in being still, and in the stillness I'm able to hear God. I'm able to reconnect and renew my faith and allow that light to shine. And then it allows me to again join in fellowship with my brothers and sisters. So again, it's in being in communion with fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. That's all of you who are listening to me. That's my parish. We can share and exchange our intimate relationship with Christ when we gather in the church. And yes, unfortunately, due to COVID, those opportunities to gather have been restricted and limited and have been put on hold. And hopefully we can return to our parish soon. But I'm also grateful for the opportunities that allow us to stay engaged, such as the live streaming of our masses, the various virtual events put on by the church, and with this Rekindle event. I mean, that's the main intention behind all of this. And that those opportunities invite us to, again, remain engaged, connected to that emotional, spiritual experience we all receive when we are in communion with one another. And as Catholic Christians, communion also takes on another meaning, and that's in which the bread and wine are consecrated and shared, right? And again, not being able to celebrate that can cause our light to kind of dim. And so grateful for the recent drive-through communion opportunities, and so nice to see everyone go so that they can receive Christ through the Eucharist. And when I serve and I think of communion, right, and that part in our service where it borrows from the book of Luke, this is my body which is given for you, do this in remembrance of me, right? I'm called to pause when the priest makes those statements. I have to think about when I serve, I am doing this in remembrance of his sacrifice, of his love. And when we receive him in Holy Communion, it should serve as a reminder of his ultimate sacrifice. He died for me, he died for us. And so then again, that's another way that we can stay in union, in active participation in our faith and in our parish community, and continue to shine that light. There's also a need to be fed, right? And from the book of John, chapter 6, verse 35, Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. This is how we are fed spiritually, is in and through communion with Christ and with our fellow brothers and sisters. So, again, I think as we reflect on the Rekindle discussions that have happened throughout the week, we reflect on the topic that I'm talking about today around communion, what church means to us. Just, going back to that verse of Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill cannot be hidden, right? So I encourage you, my fellow brothers and sisters, to be that light, to continue to shine that light. And when we can be effective witnesses of that light, when we can be in service of others, we allow that light to shine and to brighten and to be strengthened and renewed. And when we are in service with others and can fellowship with our brothers and sisters, that also allows us to rekindle, to renew, and to be strengthened by connection, because then that allows us to let that light shine even brighter. So thank you, and stay well, stay healthy, stay blessed, and continue to shine your light.
The challenge for today is to post a picture of a word that describes the church to you. And this is my example. The church is my safe space. Make sure to post to Instagram and Facebook and use the hashtag Rekindle St. Pat.